G'day ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to, wow, it's like a really cold morning and my hands are kind of frozen, but we're going to be casting a pretty sizable length game here today. It is going to be a Protoss versus Terran featuring a player who was kind enough to send this one through. I put the call out and I said, geez guys, there aren't too many replays around, and then suddenly when it rains it pours, and now I'm like flooded in replays at the moment, so I'm going to try and crank out as many as I can. Weekend coming up and I'm a little bit busy, so I'll try and do as many as I can, because today is Friday, we've got a Saturday and a Sunday coming up, and yeah, hopefully we'll have some really good games. We've got this one here, starting down at the bottom right-hand side of Acheron Waste as our red Protoss player. He's a wonderful macro player, and is currently playing for the Clarity Gaming Academy. It is Bones, and his opponent up to the top left-hand side is our blue Terran player. He's been around for quite a while, in fact featured in one of the games, which actually is still one of the most watched videos on my channel. If you want to go check it out, it's Bosnick versus Avilo, and as we can see, Avilo up at the top left-hand side here. As far as I know, he's not on a team at the moment. He's sort of bounced between teams, and some of the teams have collapsed, some of the teams have either he left the team or something to that extent. I'm unfortunately not actually too sure, but he's a very good Terran player. He for quite a while favored mech play regardless of the matchup, and did reasonably well with it. But as I said, one of the most really interesting games was from, I believe it was MLG Dallas. This was back in the days when MLG actually released replays, and there's a cast there of Avilo versus Bosnick. It was another TVP, and there were a lot of nukes used. Let's just say, I believe, if memory serves me right, there were 43 nukes launched in that game by Avilo. It was a really long macro game, about an hour long, and it was really exciting to watch, and to cast, of course, because, you know, this was about a year and a half ago, so it was quite a long time ago. Anyway, yeah, so we've got this particular match coming up here today. Bones tries to escape with that probe, not going to get too far. Avilo very quick on the draw to get that SCV over there and throw down that supply depot. Marine will pop out, the SCV should survive, there you go. And no more harassment able to be utilized here by Bones. But as I said, he's a really good macro player, so I don't expect him to do anything too cheesy right at the start, or in fact either of these players. I don't really expect any of them to, or either of them to do too much right at the start. They generally tend to favor long sort of macro styles, as we said. Avilo's sort of a bit of a mech player back in, you know, days gone by, and I'm sure many people will have known of the various outbursts from Avilo from time to time regarding balance and all these kinds of things. Looks like he's going to try and come across and block off that natural expand of Bones, but Bones with his gateway expand, we'll see if he gets it down in time. Yes, he does. Very nicely done. Throws down the Nexus, and that'll get started. So a little bit of an older style from Bones, not necessarily an outdated or a bad sort of opening here at all. It's just a slightly different one that was used a lot more in Wings of Liberty. We can see that he has gotten that first stalk around as well. Mothership core on the way, but this sort of one gate expand build did fall a little bit out of favor. It's, as I said, it's not necessarily like it's totally gone, but a lot of people do tend to favor builds that get your second gas up a little bit quicker. Sometimes you can throw down a, you can get your various tech coming out a little bit quicker and these kinds of things, but the most important part about opening up as a Protoss player is to get a lot of gas right at the start, and normally what you would want with that is your Mothership core, you want a Stalker or perhaps a Sentry or two, and then you want that Warp Gate tech researching as quickly as you can. So these are, you know, just sort of facets that have changed a little bit in Protoss when it comes to Heart of the Swarm, just due to the changes to adding in that Mothership core and those sorts of things. But meanwhile, Avilo, he's opened up with a very standard sort of build for the Terran play. We've got the factory down, a couple of mines on the way, a couple of Marines also coming through from that reacted rack. So very standard sort of stuff from him. This is just a very common sort of opening. What you want to do with this kind of build, march your way across the map with these Marines with a mine or two, as we said. There's the second one, and if you can, get that medevac across as well. And then what you can do is, if a player threatens to expand very quickly, as Bones has done here, there are options for trying to push in. We can see that there are going to be around about sort of 7 or 8 Marines or so, and you can possibly get inside and get some damage done, just due to the fact that the Protoss player is going to have a little bit less than he would normally have. The Mothership core won't necessarily have as much energy as they normally would. But the other option is, of course, to try and dive inside the main base with the mines inside a medevac here, but it looks like Avilo is going to try and push his way up to the top. It looks like with the planetary Nexus Cannon of Doom, Bones is going to be quite safe here, and that sort of does negate this attack a little bit, not necessarily sort of putting it flat on its feet right now, but it does limit the capacity for this build. And as you can see, Bones going to throw down a pylon just across to the side. This is a very sort of predictable kind of thing that avilo is doing. To just try and come through the back. So I'm a little bit surprised that Bones hasn't sent back one of his Stalkers, or perhaps a second one as well, but he's going to try and... We see the drops coming through now. Widowmine going to move across. This is a really nice tactic here. We'll talk about why putting those mines in there is a very good idea, but looks like the mines go down, getting a couple of kills, not necessarily too many here, but the Marines are also going to get a lot of damage done here, taking down quite a few of those probes, and it looks like if Bones can get these guys out of danger, this would be quite a nice little victory here for him. But the Observer helps out in spotting the mines go down before they get another shot off, and that will be the end of that harassment. So 12 workers killed in total by avilo. That's a nice start for him. He'll be very happy with that. It's a nice way to negate some of the opening economic bonus that a Protoss player will get from doing a one gate expand, sorry. But just in terms of the Widow Mines, we saw that one of the Widow Mines got placed down here. Now the reason that I like players putting them here is that normally your second one will sort of go in this position here. Sometimes when a player tries to run away their probes, they'll try and take them out the back. And, you know, if that happens, your Widowmine can clean up a lot of kills there, and that is a really, really good way to try and utilize a double Widowmine drop. If it's just a singular one, then of course, you know, generally most of the time you want to put it inside the main mineral line. So avilo opening up with quite a lot of harassment right at the start. Behind all of this, he does have Cloak researching for a Banshee. Where is the first one? There it is. So just one Banshee coming out from him at the moment. I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't picked up a second one, but Bones is going to see this. He scouts out with a couple of with a hallucinated Phoenix on the way. It looks like we won't see too much more coming out from avilo when it comes to harassment right at the start, but this is one thing which I love seeing from Bones. He's always on the ball with his scouting, getting out a couple of hallucinated Phoenix, just trying to find out what's going on. Sees that there is the expand. We've got the third command center already up and running as an orbital. And we'll see how much damage this Banshee can get done. Observer well positioned here to scout out what's going on. So the Banshee forced back for the moment. Decloaks, and we'll see that avilo is he's in the worker lead at the moment. But we can see that back in the backside of Bones' base, we've got Double Forge on the way, and these guys are going to research those the +1 weapons and armor as quick as you like, and he's going to add in that little bit of tech to help out with any upcoming push that he might want to do. And we'll see what avilo's going to go for, because at the moment he's looking a little bit mechish, and in fact, there you go. Alright, so we got 4 factories now coming up for avilo at this point. It looks like he is going to move into a mech style. We've got +1 on the weapons researching here. It's interesting to see how sort of different Terran players will change the way they upgrade. Like Goody, and obviously here avilo, and I think Drunken Boy as well. A couple of people who only get one armory and really take their time with their upgrades to try and help out with getting out a few more units right at the front of their expansions. So it's a little bit interesting to see that. Like, a lot of players also like to double armory and try and get out those sorts of units. But as we can see, a great response from Bones here. We can see that the Banshee trying to float through and get some damage done, but unfortunately she is spotted. There is an observer here to scout out to the cloaked Banshee there, but for the moment, looks like that's not going to get too much done. I don't think there was really any kills done by that Banshee, but a great response here from Bones. He's going to get out double robo very, very quickly, going to get those immortals pumping out as quickly as he can, charge researching as well. This is pretty much a really great way to try and respond to someone doing mech. So he scouted out that there were those extra factories being built over at avilo's base. Now, this is one of the few ways that you can just react straight away when it comes to dealing with mech. And obviously, number one, get those upgrades out as quickly as you can. As we can see, we've got Bones researching 2-2 already. If he can get up to 3-3 before avilo is anywhere near his own 2-2 or even his 3-3, then he'll be in a really good position. The other factor is to add in a bunch of immortals. These are a way to sort of transition through to the more dominant sort of phase of Protoss versus mech, in that you want to get to sort of Tempest and Void Rays and those kinds of things at the late game. And if you can utilize that kind of stuff, then you're in a really good position. But you can't get there just straight away. You can't throw down 5 Stargates and just say, hello boys, we're making some Tempests. What you do need to do is make sure you're safe against any possible pushes. A lot of Terrans will try and move out at around about 130 supply. And this looks like it is going to be the number that avilo may go for here. We'll see. He's... as I said, he's been a player who does utilize mech quite a lot, but I haven't seen him use it lately, so I'll be intrigued to see how he goes with this. But as we can see, Storm is now researched for bones. Storm really helps out with dealing with the Hellbats and things like that. If you can hit some clumped tanks, then that is also a really nice bonus there. So it is good to see that Bones is getting prepared for the mech. Another thing which we do like to see as a Protoss when you're against mech is getting up your extra bases as quick as you can. You want to abuse that immobility of mech, the very slow and sort of, you know, just sort of sluggish nature of mech, and the fact that tanks are very slow, they have to siege and unsiege. We've got Thors, of course, that are very slow as well. And, you know, you want to try and abuse that. You want to say, alright, well, if you want to attack, come at me, because, you know, I've got 4 bases right now, and I can just pump out a whole bunch of gateways. As we can see, Bones just building up an extra amount of gateways here. We only had 3 to start with, and then the 2 robos, so he's really gone hard at getting his tech out. And as you can see, a 3-3 already on the way for our Protoss player right now. So it looks as if we are going to just sort of push through this mid-game, and avilo is not going to attack at the moment. He's looking to secure a 4th base. He's trying to keep up with any sort of expanding that Bones is going to do. We've got the hallucinated Phoenix just scouting about. We'll get taken down by a turret. There you go. And the double upgrades now coming out of avilo as well. So for the Terran players, of course, we'll look at what avilo is up to. We've got the mech upgrades coming along, +1 to ship plating being added in, +2 to vehicle weapons also being added on as well. So the important part of what avilo is doing here is it is not going too hard into you know, any sort of unit at this point. He's spreading it out. We've got some good counters here to air-based units with these Thors. We've got the tanks on the ground as well to help out. And then also, of course, those Hellbats that can deal with Zealots very, very easily, especially once they get these upgrades rolling. They just absolutely tear apart Zealots on the ground. So he's adding in a good mixture of units here, not necessarily sort of diving into anything in particular just as of yet. He knows that his opponent does have the double robo. As soon as you see double robo, you do need to get some ghosts out, and that's what avilo has done. So he's got some ghosts on the way, but it looks like Bones is going to be the first one to initiate an attack here. This could be very interesting. He has a lot of immortals. We've got a couple of Archons as well, and it looks like Bones is... I don't think this is the greatest idea at this point. He's a little bit down in supply. Of course, we can see that he's about 40 supply down, and he's also going to have a little bit of a trouble here with these drops. I was going to say a little bit earlier, haven't really seen too much harassment apart from that early stage of the game from avilo, but he's come back. He's dropped in a couple of Hellbats, and he said, alright, we're going to get those probes out of there. A couple of feedbacks will almost take out the medevacs, but nice little bit of harassment. This is something which we saw Drunken Boy utilize against Minigun. If you want to go and have a look at that game, that is another Terran versus Protoss mech game, and Drunken Boy was just absolutely all over the place with his drops and doing all sorts of damage with his Hellbats and Hellions and all these kinds of things. In fact, speaking of Hellions, we've got a few out on the map at the moment. Looking at the work account, we're pretty much even at this point. 65 to 65. avilo going to try and see what he can do about that, but unfortunately, there are just way too many Immortals here. A couple of Archons added in as well, and I mean, if that doesn't do the job, then we've got 6 Templar out and ready to storm. So we can see that these guys are very, they're sort of evenly matched at this point. And, you know, while avilo does have a supply lead, the thing about mech, which I'm sure everyone has heard me harp on about on and on and on, is that you have to be very, very careful. You have to be very strategic. You have to sit in a position and say, all right, where is he coming from? You know, we often see a lot of Terran players when they mech, they'll sort of build up a couple of planetary fortresses at the side. This allows you to protect against attacks that come into the 3rd and into the main side of the base as well. You can also see some players will even throw down a couple of planetary fortresses across here as well, just to really supplement the fact that they normally will have a lot of minerals. As we can see here, already banking 2,000 minerals. He's got a decent amount of gas, but I mean, this is the point whereas the mech Terran players start to think, all right, well, I need to start laying down some command centers. We want some more orbital commands. We want some planetary fortresses to protect areas of the map, and as we can see, he is really boosting up that economy at this point. So we've got Avilo now getting his upgrades on the way. We've got +3 to weapons just about done. We have +2 on the armor also on the way. Second Ghost Academy coming up. In fact, the third Ghost Academy is now on the way, so he's going to have a whole bunch of nuke potential here from Avilo. We'll see how that comes about. In fact, how many Ghost Academies do we have? We'll press that old T button. We've got, oh, it's just the 3. Alright, so we've just got 3 at the moment. He's researching Cloak as well, which is a very, very useful thing to utilize when it comes to mech. You don't want these ghosts to die. If you can keep the ghosts alive, get yourself to a count of around about sort of 10 and above on the ghost. That is infinitely helpful. Why is that, you ask? Well, once these immortals have their shields depleted, they're pretty much food for Thors and tanks. If you have the Templar, EMP, they're also just basically dead weight. And let's not forget Archons. What are they made up of primarily? Apart from gas and really weird comments about power overwhelming, they are made up of 350 shields and only 10 health. So EMPs are just a huge factor here, and this is why we mentioned that Bones is, his makeup of his army here is a very transitional sort of thing. It's a way to get to the end point that you want to be at as a Protoss player when you're facing off against mech. Now, this is sort of we're starting to see the preparation for that end game transition here. We've got upgrades coming along from Bones. We've got level 1 on the weapons and armor for the air units. We've got 3 Stargates here. Perhaps a couple more across in various positions on the map would also help out. But we've got the Fleet Bacon down to the side. Lovely, lovely Bacon. And he's going to get prepared to start slowly adding in the Tempest and the Void Rays and these kinds of things. So this is a part where a Protoss player has to be very careful, very slow about what they're doing here. And now, I know, guys, this is a game that hasn't necessarily had big sorts of battles or anything like that. This is just the nature of PvT when it comes to mech versus Protoss. It's normally very slow. So, you know, if you were looking for a game that is like a high-powered action game, we're gonna have to wait a little while, I would assume, until things start to get very explodey like a Michael Bay film, because I can guarantee you they're going to be big explosions. So hope you are enjoying it so far. We've got Avilo just pushing across with a Thor, trying to defend this tiny little Stalker attack here. Why is he using 3 Stalkers to attack, you say? Well, they're very mobile, but it also allows you to spend some supply on Tempest, and this is what we're going to get coming out of Bones very soon. So a scan goes down from Avilo. He knows that that is coming. You can see the triple Stargates pumping away at getting those Tempests out. We've got the upgrades also coming through from Bones as well. So now we're starting to move into the little bit more of the Sky Army, where we're going to have the Tempests able to shoot down units from long range, and the only real threat that they have to deal with at this point are EMPs and then the Thors. If the Thors can get some good splash damage, whether they're using the Javelin missile launchers or if they're using single target, the Punisher cannons, the Tempests can go down very quickly, but you have to be very, very careful. And speaking of very careful and very sneaky, Avilo pushing across to the side here. A couple of snipes on a Templar there, and then triple nukes are now going down, so we are going to see a triple nuke attack on this Nexus. I don't think... Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, I don't think that that's going to kill the Nexus, just because of the radius of the nuclear strike, but, you know, when a Templar comes across and feedbacks them, then I guess it doesn't really matter. So, Avilo is going to move across. He does have the transformation servos on those Hellions, so he is able to move into a position with his Hellions and then switch them into Hellbats and get some good damage done. But the question is, will he be able to get through anything? There are so many Immortals, there are so many Archons, and now Tempests starting to come out from our Protoss players. So Bones is still going to sacrifice some more of these gateway units. We can see that his economy, both of these guys still sitting at a little bit of a lower sort of count of units at this, workers at this point. Not really too much of a worry. They're going to start banking up all of their resources soon. We can see that Avilo now starting to add in a few more orbital commands as well. We can see, in fact, he's got a whole bunch of them now coming out. This is exactly what we were talking about before, where it gets to a point where you need to start sacrificing these SCVs. What we'll see probably within the next 2 to 3 minutes is Avilo probably just throw out around about anywhere between sort of 15 to possibly even 20-25 of those SCVs, just so he can have a little bit more supply invested in his army. As we can see, the army supply is very even at the moment, and the worker supply is pretty much the same as well. But when you get to this stage as a Terran player, you've got a nice little bank here. The Hellbat's going to get thrown away. He doesn't really need those guys too much anymore. and we can see that there is going to be another nuclear strike attempt up at the 5th base of Bones here. We've got number 1 nuke is going to come through. I don't think the Bones is ready for this one. He's going to lose these cannons, possibly that pylon, definitely the Templar, but the Nexus will stay alive. There you go, we lose a couple of probes as well. So it looks as if we are starting to move into that later transition. And like we were talking about the transition of the Protoss before, this is a part where the Terran has to be careful as well. Wow, are you serious? A cloaked unit killing a cloaked unit there. Very nicely done by Bones. But this is a sort of part where Terran player is going to start to move into the battle cruisers here. We can see them starting to come out at around about 4 or 5 at a time. You have this mixture of Ravens. We normally will see sort of a decent amount of Ravens alongside the Viking, maybe a few Vikings, also a couple of battle cruisers as well. And as the battle cruiser count slowly starts to increase, it gets very, very worrisome for a Protoss player depending on their mixture. So this is going to be a very interesting phase of the game. We can see Bones slowly starting to get rid of some of these units on the ground. And with these Immortals being taken out, if they can get across and maybe take out some of these units here. Wow, Thor drop from Avilo there. Unfortunately, Thors don't do too well against 3/3/3 Immortals at this point. Comes across and is going to do some decent damage to the Planetary Fortress, but the SCVs will help out with that easily. Looks like a few of the Thors also coming across, and 4 Thors with 3/3 on their own weapons will be able to do a little bit more damage. And Avilo is going to throw in some Thor drops. These the Thor ships, as the Koreans call them. Going to see what damage they can get done. Of course, we do have an observer spotting out for Bones at this point, but you know he should be okay against that drop coming through. Meanwhile, on the backside, we can see that Bones is just going to get rid of some of these Stalkers here, slowly blinking them across, and he's going to get inside the main base. But at this point, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there's no real damage. Dropping down a mule there. Are you serious? What were those mules for? I'm not exactly sure, but we can see that the mules were dropped down there, and the battle cruiser count is slowly starting to increase. So both these players really starting to transition into that later game stage where we've got Battlecruiser, Raven, Ghost as well for the Terran player. Very important to keep a few Ghosts in the mix, while the Protoss is now starting to switch into the large amounts of air. With the Tempest, we can see the level 3 armor now coming out. We've already got 3 shields. Is the 3 weapons done? I think it is. Yes, it is. So this is starting to get to a point where it's sort of at one of those stages of a game where it's like, I don't want to attack you because I know that you'll have a better position, but if you attack me, then I'll have a better position. So what we're going to do is just sit back for a little while. But speaking of which, Avilo decides to take the fight to his opponent. A couple of Thors dropped off inside the 3rd base. Looks like they'll be able to take out that cannon, the couple of cannons pretty quickly. Also a DT was dropped in, but that got taken out very quickly. A couple of mules going to throw down here. Would love to see them repairing that Thor. I think that was what Avilo was intending on doing here. There you go. Gets a couple of repairs going, but Immortals are just so strong when it comes to dealing with all of those armored units, and they blast apart the 2 Thors very, very easily. And speaking of which, Thor's attempting to block off an orbital command from dropping down, but Avilo brings over the battle cruisers. And this is a stage of the game where things will start to get very, very dicey here between these 2 players. We've got both players still mining away quite nicely, dropping down their worker count just a tiny bit. We're down to 52 for each of them. It's quite amazing how both these players have had their worker count virtually identical this entire game. But what we would like to see is Bones perhaps moving across to this... well, there you go, I was going to say. Well done by Bones. He heard me. He's listening to the cast right now. He comes across to the 6th base up towards the top side. He tries to come across and get that Nexus down, but 2 tanks are going to protect that for the moment. And it looks like we'll get a couple of drops. So the Academy's prepared. Yes, they are. There are a couple of nukes ready to go. But the Tempests say no to Ghosts and no nukes here. There is a non-nuclear proliferation treaty going on right now. And there is the sacrifice of those SCVs. He's now going to start getting rid of those. This allows Avilo to throw in a couple more battlecruisers, and as we can see, the battlecruiser count is starting to get a little bit ridiculous right now. 12 battlecruisers to the 15 Tempest, 12 Ravens out on the map, 5 Ghosts, various positions on the map, 15 Tempests all together. We've got that the 9 Templar down on the ground, a couple of Archons still left down on the ground, and along with that, we've still got 8 Immortals around and about as well. So both these players really starting to move towards that late game, really heavy sort of death ball composition where they're heavy units, they're heavy damage, and it is a very, very troublesome thing to deal with. So Avilo's going to try and drop inside the main base. of Bones. Will he be able to get inside? It looks like a couple of Ghosts coming across, get a snipe off on the Templar. The nukes now coming out. Looks like nuke number 1 and number 2 are going to get off here, but the DTs will clean that up very quickly. Finally, it looks like avilo is he? Wait, is he going to kill that? Yes, he is. I think he should be able to. With level 3 weapons, he should be able to get rid of that. But as you can see, avilo just trying to bide his time here, getting this extra base up. The 6 base down the bottom side here has been mining away quite nicely. We can see the mule count there as a very signature sort of sign of a Terran at this point. When you've got all of those orbital commands available to throw down those mules, it sort of gets to a point where you basically don't need SCVs at all. And this game is still very passive at this point. Neither of these players. It's a real meeting of players who like to macro up. You know, when you've got a Terran player who's meching, they love to macro. They love to turtle. They love to sit back and wait for the perk toss to come to them. Love to get to this sort of army here. We can see then another nuke going down from avilo, trying to get rid of some of this static defense here at the front door of the 3rd base. But I don't think it's going to kill off some of the cannons. I don't think it's going to open the door, though. That pylon. Oh, wait. I was wrong. Alright, there you go. And more nukes going down. It looks like the attempted 6 base is under threat right now. Nuke dropping down. Gets rid of some of the damage, some of the health on that Nexus. But, I mean, it doesn't really kill off too much. DT's now coming in, but the nuke is... Oh, wow. That was very close to already dropping down from the sky. But avilo continuing on with these nuclear strikes here, just trying to slowly take down some of the static defense of Bones, but I mean, he's very easily able to reconstruct some of those buildings there, and I mean, this is going to be a very interesting sort of position here, because avilo is now getting to a point where he's almost at that maxed out army, and I mean, he's got, how many battlecruisers do we have? 14 battlecruisers in total. We've got a lot of planetary fortresses here defending this position. Ravens are also still around about 12 of them. We've got a couple of Vikings up in the sky, but these, I would say you can probably get rid of these Vikings. I mean, if you've got a count of 14 battlecruisers and you've got all the point defense drones that are going to be available for avilo here to utilize against Tempest. Yes, point defense drones do stop Tempest shots, by the way, just in case you'd never really sort of seen that in this sort of phase of a game. But I think you could probably get rid of some of those Vikings, but these guys are sort of in a very odd spot right now. Looks like, speaking of an odd position, the battlecruiser is coming along to easily take down all of those Immortals. Of course, the hardened shield does not stop Yamato cannons, so a couple of shots going off from avilo there. He's easily able to clean up all of those Immortals, but this allows Bones to get out a few more Tempests. We've got 5 more on the way. This is going to be, is this seriously going to take him, yeah, this is going to take him to a total of 21 Tempests out of the map. Now, keep in mind, the Tempests do a ridiculous amount of damage. 39 against ground units, they do 39 against normal, non-massive air units, and then 95 damage against battle cruisers up in the air. Of course, those massive units, they do have a lot of armor, they've got a lot of health, 550 health here, so it still does take a reasonable amount of shots from the Tempest to kill them off, but I mean, when there are 21 Tempests up in the air, it's sort of a bit of a non-issue, but we'll see how the battle goes, because of course it does depend on those EMPs, on the shots from nukes and things like this. avilo still continuing on with these nuclear strikes here. It looks like he's not going to catch those Tempests, but he will be able to slowly encroach on this base here. If he can, like, sort of make his way towards this sort of position here and start dropping down some nukes on the Stargates and these sort of things, that could help out a little bit. But I mean, at this point of the game, this is where late game gets very, very important, relying on energy-based units for the players, just trying to recycle as much as they can. And it also gets very important to try and strike at your opponent's armies as well, because you can take down some of these Stargates, but I mean, Bones has still got a lot of gas, he's got a lot of minerals coming in as well, and it looks as if we'll have a nuke coming through. Does get a good strike on one of the cannons, a couple of the probes, and also the assimilator, but not too much of an issue here. Nukes now going up from avilo. He is well prepared with all sorts of nukes now coming out, continually dropping in nukes. Is that seriously a shadow of the nukes? But nukes going to drop down now. I think this is going to do a pretty sizable amount of damage. In fact, no. There they are. Alright. Nice amount of probe kills there. Not too bad at all, I guess. I mean, we've got 43 workers killed by avilo. We've got a couple of photon cannons go down. But this is going to be a really interesting phase of the game. We've got the battlecruiser count now up at a total of, how many have we got? 17 battlecruisers are now out on the map. Continuous nuke strikes coming out from avilo. He's just trying to push his way into this base. Meanwhile, down on the bottom edge of the map, it looks like avilo is going to have a little bit of trouble here with a couple of stalkers at that base, but the nukes do come down. And we see the cannon slowly deteriorating at this base. This is going to be a very important base here for Bones. As we can see, he's slowly crept his way up through the map, through the right side of the map, and is now up at this 6th base up at the top side here. This is going to have a lot of minerals towards the later stages of the game. Meanwhile, for avilo, he's got a good bank, 7,000, 3,000 here, but his mineral count is going to be a little bit lower, a little bit quicker. Why is that? Because of the mules. So we'll see how that factors in here. Looks like SCVs are going to be going to town on some of these units here. A couple of hallucinations coming out from Bones to try and scout out what's going on. Nuke's about to drop down. Going to take out the pylon and probably that assimilator as well. Or not the assimilator, but very close to killing off that assimilator. There you go. Pylons go down. Another nuke continuously coming out here from avilo. Meanwhile, for Bones, I'm not exactly sure what he's planning on doing here. We're sort of waiting to see if he's going to make a maneuver on the forces of avilo, but another nuke will strike. This Nexus is very close to death at this point. You can see it's only on 500 HP at this point. A second nuke, there it is going to come down and deal with this Nexus, and that is going to be good night for that Nexus there, I would say. There is number 1. And there is number 2. So Nexus goes down at the 6th base of Bones, but there's not much damage being done to his army at this point. We've still got a total of 25 Tempest out in the sky for Bones, and I mean, he's gonna... Here we go. We may actually have some movement here. We've finally got some movement from these players. Looks like Bones getting ready to attack. Tempest going to town on nothing at this point, because those point defense drones, as I mentioned, really useful to have against these Tempest here. So Bones is going to back up for just a little bit here. He senses that those point defense drones are there. They do such an excellent job at taking out the Tempest damage that is being done. And avilo has basically lost this base across to the side here. Bones takes out one of the tanks, tries to escape with those stalkers, but they fall off and fall down to the ground there. So avilo has sort of taken control of the map at this point. He's still holding this 6th base down towards the bottom side, but he's going to have a very hard time taking this, I feel. It's going to be very hard to push against all of these Tempests here, and this is really going to come down to a fight of who has the most energy at the particular point, because what we will probably see from Bones are some Templar moving out, trying to feed back some of these Ravens, possibly even trying to feed back the point defense drones as well. And then if he can get rid of the threat of the point defense drones in terms of the defensive threat, then Bones should really just easily win a fight. But if Bones overcommits it all and runs into some battlecruisers with their Yamato cannons charged up and point defense drones all over the place, then he's going to have a very hard time. So we see that nukes continuously going down here, just sort of posturing with these nuclear strikes here. It looks very pretty and everything, but it's not really doing too much. But this does give avilo a little bit of room to try and push up and throw down a couple more nukes on the main forces of Bones. But Bones sees those ghosts coming in, but they do get a couple of snipes off on the Templar. 3 Templars still available here for Bones, but in fact 5 Templar, I should say, are still available. But it looks as if he is actually going to move in. We've got a lot of Tempest off to the side here, finally throwing down their attacks. The point defense drones are activated by the Ravens. It looks as if a couple of, there is a hallucinated void ray. I do love that. I would love to see some more hallucinations coming out from Bones, but I mean, at this point, it doesn't really matter too much because he doesn't really have any ground units left over. 6 more Tempests being built right now, so the Templar count has been reduced. The ground force count has been reduced as well, but that is not a bit of a worry for Bones at this point, because he can just add in more Templar, slowly start to reduce the health of some of these battlecruisers. And where are the... Is he seriously not going to drop down any more mules at this point? Would like to see some mules coming down, because I mean, avilo needs to repair those battlecruisers. It's very surprising that he has not already done that. There are some feedbacks also removing quite a lot of the health here, and avilo losing some of his health here on these battle cruisers. He's rebuilding some ravens as well. We see the raven count reduced to just the 7, and there are some of those mules. Finally, we get those coming out, and it looks as if he's going to attempt to try and take this base. A couple of cannons going to have something to say about that. Look at that, a 47-minute cannon rush on the 6th base of avilo. There you go, you cannot deal with that. A couple of stalkers have still continued to harass this base. This is good. This is really good stuff from Bones, just to try and say to his opponent, well, you're not freely able to move out too far. But as you can see, Bones doing his best to try and make his way through these point defense drones. They finally start to run out of energy, and it looks as if he can just move up on this position a little bit more, he may be able to get some damage done here. But it looks like the Tempest are still just so powerful, but still being stopped by all of those point defense drones. We can see that avilo is now starting to add in the battle cruisers, and we can see that he's adding in a couple of Hellions as well. This is a little bit of a sign, like, you know, when you see a Zerg and they're just suddenly building a lot of Zerglings when they've either lost their army or they're just trying to kill someone off. This is a similar sort of thing here when the you know, because last time I checked, Hellions don't do too well against Tempest up in the air. What they do okay against are the Templar on the ground. So I do like the attempt there from avilo to try and kill off some of the Templar, I should say. But I mean, it is starting to come to a little bit of a head here. We've got a battle finally occurring. Tempest going to town on some of those battle cruisers. Feedback, storms, blasts all over the place here from Bones. He's just doing so much damage. 95 damage per shot from each of these Tempests on all of those battle cruisers, but he has started to lose some of his own battle cruisers here. We can some of his own Tempests here, I should say. He's now down to just a total of 24, and I say just 24, but I mean, it's quite a lot to deal with here. And Bones is starting to take control at this point. avilo is trying to build up some units at this point. 9 Vikings being built, and that is a sign that he knows he's in a little bit of trouble right now, because the Tempests are just so strong up in the air. And it looks as if we may have our winner here right now, just being very patient, taking his time. Bones is probably going to take the win here. Just too many Tempests to deal with for a Terran player at this point. avilo trying to offensively mine at this base here with a few mules, but I mean, the damage is done. The battle cruisers are dead. Very hard to rebuild a very high-cost, high-powered army like all of those battle cruisers here. You know, I think there are a couple of, there may have been a couple of very small issues for the way avilo engaged there. We saw him trying to, there weren't too many EMPs from what I saw. He was trying to snipe off some of the Templar as well, but I mean, it does get to a point where it is very hard to engage into a high Tempest count at this stage of the game for a Terran player, whether they started off with mech or whether they started off with bio. It's just so hard to engage into something like this. They do so much damage. I would imagine what the DPS of that army is. It would just be off the charts right now. We've got a command. I was waiting for the offensive planetary fortress here, but it didn't actually come to pass. But avilo now starting to lose the rest of his forces here. He's down at 98 supply, and I think we will probably see him tap out very soon. He doesn't really have anything producing at this point. We've got a lot of Hellions, we've got a lot of Vikings, a couple of Ravens have come about as well, but I mean, this is just going to be very hard for him to engage into this. His opponent, Bones, does have a very low gas count at this point and isn't really bringing in too much extra gas because all these guys are now out of juice. But you still got to try and bust through all of these Tempests here. And I mean, 28 Tempest is quite a lot to try and deal with, whether you've got, you know, all these Vikings and point defense drones or not. So we can see now the Bones just sending in a couple more Stalkers to the backside here, trying to deal with this last planetary fortress that is covering a mining base, and pretty much that's going to be it at this point here between these two guys. A really interesting game to see avilo pull out some mech again. I seem to remember him saying that he doesn't really mech too much anymore, but he's given it a shot in this game. I think a couple of issues revolved around the lack of, we didn't see too much harassment towards the mid-game there. Would have liked to have seen perhaps a couple more attempts at Hellbat drops and those kinds of things. Yes, it is kind of hard to drop in Hellbats against a Protoss player when they've got cannons and feedbacks and that kind of thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't give it a shot. But either way, he has, unfortunately, we moved through to the late game there with without those ghosts able to EMP the Templar and the Tempest. You know, it sort of gets to a point where these guys are just out of control right here, right now. With 3-3-3 on that army, we've got the Stalkers slowly pushing into this base here, and I mean, I'm not actually sure why Avilo is still here. I imagine he might just be trying to contemplate what was going on with this game, but looks like the base down at the bottom side, the 6th base is now gone. We can see Stalkers slowly starting to march their way inside here. Cannons being prepared just in case of some sort of crazy reprisal at some point from Avilo. Perhaps, you know, the deadly mass Hellion push is going to come across the map, but I don't think that is going to do too much. As we said, last time we researched it, there was no way for Hellions to deal with Tempest. So another interesting factor is how passive Bones was. We get to see, you know, we saw a very early initial push from Bones with some Immortals and that kind of thing, but he didn't really get too much damage done because Avilo was well prepared. Perhaps, you know, another thing which I could certainly advise to some of the Protoss players out there, if you ever had to deal with mech as a Protoss player, try and utilize some drops of your own, perhaps like some speed prisms with Immortals in them, drop off some DTs, some Zealots, maybe you can do some harassment of your own, but it is very important to be very careful of a Terran player getting to a large count of battlecruisers and Ghosts, because if you don't get to that maxed out of Tempest and Templar, then it can cause you a lot of issues. So it's very important to be very careful of that kind of thing, but once you get to this point, the Bones is at, it is just too hard to stop. Storms going down, Templar just ripping apart those Void Racer, Stalkers on the ground, and Avilo gives his final thoughts. I can imagine what it's going to be. David Kim, good balance designer. GG! And we finally see the end of this game. So, really interesting a mech versus Protoss game between these two extremely passive players. You know, for those of you who want like action sort of packed games, then obviously this game wasn't necessarily for you during the mid game. Perhaps you could, you know, have a drink or something like that during that mid game stage. But either way, pretty interesting game to see from these two guys. Make sure you go and check out Bones on Twitter and Twitch, and also Avilo still streams, I believe. I don't remember. Obviously, I've added that in already. But anyway, hope you had a lot of fun. I'll catch you all next time. Now, as we can see, the 1-1 upgrades are now done for Cats. Swarm hosts now starting to make their way out. 6 are now going to be out on the map, and he can probably start to slowly just maybe move himself across the map. Like, I wouldn't... Like, the problem with this map...